So how to enable 5G to keep us ahead of the rest of the world? First, I think as Dr. Reed mentioned, what this committee is doing is exactly what we should be doing, which is to think about creative ways to find additional spectrum for both licensed and unlicensed uses, and also to have conversations about how to improve spectrum efficiency and spectrum sharing. Like the transition from 3G to 4G, the transition from 4G to 5G will increase traffic on our wireless networks, which will necessitate the need for more licensed spectrum. Likewise, the more spectrum we have traveling on our licensed networks will result in more offload to our unlicensed networks, to Wi-Fi. So we need more license or more spectrum set aside for unlicensed use as well.
All right, thanks. And we know more and more consumer data is traveling over unlicensed airwaves, but unlicensed spectrum is more than just a boon to consumers. It also drives innovation and significantly contributes to the U.S. economy. Some estimate that it gives a $220 billion boost to the economy every year. Earlier this year, FCC Commissioner Jessica Rosenworcel proposed that Congress create a Wi-Fi dividend to account for these benefits. And I wanted to ask Mr. Berenbroick, in your testimony, you say that a Wi-Fi dividend may be a good idea. Can you explain more about this and the other options for increasing spectrum for unlicensed use?
Sure. Yeah, so I referenced Commissioner Rosenworcel's, I believe it was testimony before a Senate Commerce Committee where she mentioned the idea of the Wi-Fi dividend. The idea there would be that when we look at spectrum to free up for licensed use, we also think about spectrum to free up for unlicensed use. The rationale is that the traffic that comes over licensed networks, much of that will eventually be offloaded onto unlicensed networks, and so you need those two systems to work together in concert. And I think you're exactly right when you mentioned the economic benefits of unlicensed spectrum. Like you mentioned, $220 billion in yearly economic activity, but that's only part of it. You're also talking about making a bet on the future with unlicensed. Unlicensed, we're looking at the Internet of Things. We're looking at billions of devices connected to the network. The ability of anyone to plug in, and the ability of anybody to plug in and to develop a device, to develop a product at relatively low costs, and to get it onto the network and to create a market for that product. So the economic benefits, I would imagine, are somewhat underestimated by the $220 billion, at least going forward into the future.
All right. I want one more question for you. Earlier this week, Politico had a story chronicling the difficulty we face in getting credit in the budget for revenue generated by spectrum auctions. I know you're not an expert in federal spectrum valuation, but can you elaborate on the value to consumers that comes from the reallocation of additional spectrum?
Yes. So I saw the same article that you referenced, and let me preface, I am not an expert on budget policy or CBO scoring, but we were, the unlicensed community is disappointed to see that unlicensed spectrum and the economic benefits of unlicensed spectrum are not really considered by CBO. And so we would be happy to work with Congress, work with other stakeholders to figure out how to address that issue, to make sure that allocating more spectrum for both licensed and unlicensed uses is made possible, and that the CBO scoring issue doesn't continue to be a roadblock.
All right. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.